The year is 1954, and Life magazine had just published an article shedding light on a major problem in America's public school system: reading. Kids hated it.
Yeah!
So, William Spalding, a publisher at Houghton Mifflin, decided he'd try to tackle this problem. His directive? Write me a story that first graders can't put down. But he didn't stop there. In a meeting with one of his most promising writers, he added a constraint. A massive constraint for any writer. That constraint resulted in one of the most prolific children's books in history, and just 3 years later, the same author would use another, more massive constraint to do it again, and eventually win a Pulitzer Prize. Hello, and welcome to The Loyalty Loop, where every Thursday I share a new revenue-generating concept, idea, or example for strategic thinking executives just like you. And today, we're embarking on a 4-part series inspired by the global pandemic. Yeah, that's right. We're going to discover how a few people use the lockdown constraints they experienced as fuel to transform their businesses for the better. And we'll look at how we can embrace the constraints to fuel innovation, progress, and even focus, pandemic or not. Because it turns out, constraints breed creativity. Look, it'd be great if we had a million amazing ideas and we could execute on every one. But the truth is, if we want our teams to be more creative and generate better ideas faster, we need to do 2 things. Let's break down the first and crucial ingredient to setting up your team for successful output. When William Spalding embarked on a journey to entice our kids to read, he could have told his authors to
write a children's book that 80% of first graders will finish.
Or if he worked in a modern corporate environment, he might have said,
increase the NPS score to 80% for Houghton Mifflin children's books as measured by a statistically relevant cross-sample of American first graders enrolled in public schools.
Nope. He said,
write me a story that first graders can't put down.
If you want the best output, craft a simple, clear, and qualitative directive. Hear that? Qualitative, not quantitative. You might say,
craft an email that motivates our coldest leads to immediately respond.
Or
design a campaign that inspires men to embark on their own weight loss journey.
Now, contrary to popular belief, if you want to make the most of your team's creative powers, you cannot let them run wild. Sure, you might end up with lots of good ideas, but that's not what you need. You need a single great idea. So you must add constraints. Yep. Just one constraint can make a massive impact on your team's ability to craft a creative campaign or transform your business. The simple act of adding a constraint transforms a creative brief into a challenge. It's a wager. And a wager inspires action. So, what constraint did William Spalding challenge his writer with?
Write that children's book using only 225 words from a list of 348.
Think of it like this.
I bet you can't write a children's book first graders can't put down using only 225 words from this list.
Or, I bet you can't craft an email that motivates our coldest leads to respond using only 1 sentence. Or, I bet you can't design a campaign that inspires men to embark on a weight loss journey without ever mentioning weight loss. So Spalding's writer squirreled himself away and wrote a book. Technically, he lost the wager because he used 236 words from that list, which is 11 words over the constraint. But that book was The Cat in the Hat by Dr. Seuss. In a second, I'll tell you the next constraint Seuss embraced that resulted in another children's classic only 3 years later. But here's the deal. Every week for the next 3 weeks, we're going to be uncovering amazing stories about business people who turned the constraints of a global pandemic into some serious business wins. So, if you don't want to miss next week's episode about how one nonprofit took a simple directive with one massive constraint and turned it into a giant fundraising initiative, you should subscribe right now and use the secret code Dr. Seuss for exclusive access. Alright, so Dr. Seuss's next publisher, Bennett Cerf, gave him a new directive. Get more kids to read. And he added a constraint. Write that book using only 50 words. This time, Dr. Seuss won the wager. That book was Green Eggs and Ham. Yup, it's the Dr. Seuss book that used the least number of words but sold the most copies. So, in your next team meeting, craft a simple, clear, qualitative directive and a clear constraint. You just might be surprised at how good the resulting work is. Alright, I'll see you in next week's Loyalty Loop. In the meantime, here are the 50 words in Green Eggs and Ham. A, am, and, anywhere, are, be, both, box, are, could, dark, would. Yeah, that's it. All 50 words.